So I thought I'd start leaping back a bunch of decades in southern France, in the town of Arles. There was a photo festival started in 1970 by Lucien Clerc and some other folks. And in the 80s, two photojournalistic photographers, Fred Baldwin and Wendy Watrous, went to Arles, and they could see this dynamic happening where there were these photographers who were there with portfolios under their arms and looking around, and if you happen to recognize Robert Delpierre, the publisher of The Americans, you could go over and say, Mr. Delpierre, will you look at my portfolio? But it was all, or Lemany, the director of the Bibliothèque Nationale. If you knew what Mr. Lemany looked like, you could go over and he would say, oh yes, I would love to have some of these. Give me a bunch of your work. He was sort of famous for this. But if you didn't recognize these people, there was no system. There was nothing in place. Everybody was just sitting at cafe tables, and So sometimes a photographer would be showing work to their brother-in-law, who was a janitor, and a line would form behind them. But anyway, so Fred and Wendy saw this and saw the importance for photographers of a way to somehow connect with curators or people who could help get their work out into the world. And they said, well, we can do it the American way, where it's very democratic and it's equal for everybody, and it's not about who you know.
But you pay for it.
You'd have to pay. Yeah.
That's American.
Yeah, that's American too. Yeah.
But we're still paying.
Yeah. But so they set up. They invented this system where the photographers pay a fee, and that fee, the money from that fee, is used to pay for plane tickets and hotel rooms for photography publishers and exhibitors, whether they're museums or nonprofit galleries or for-profit galleries or whoever can help. Some also magazine photo editors, so people who could help you, and from that started in 1986, and from 1986 to 2000, that was the only thing like that in America, and there was a huge demand. The application opening and the application closing, because it was full, were about a minute and a half apart, literally. So the person who used to run the meeting place in Houston, who had got then fired because he had some problems. But anyway, he said, well, I'm gonna do my own. I know how to do this. I'm gonna do it in Tulsa, and he did it in Tulsa, and it was a complete disaster. But Guy Swanson, who used to have the Photographic Image Gallery here in town, was one of the people who was in Tulsa, and he said the reason this is a disaster is because it's not in Portland. Come to it in Portland, and we have people like Stu, Cherie Heiser, Guy, me, people who can mobilize a community that already used to helping each other and
Tom Champion,
working in a team way. So that was something that. It was like something that was meant to happen because there was so much demand for it, and this was the place for it to happen because this is the community for it. And so we had our first portfolio review in 2000, similar system.
and I remember I was called in because putting an event like this together is an expensive proposition. So they came up with the idea of having a photography auction and a big gala event. And I was asked to help organize the auction and both curate it and make sure the flow of things was going well. And I don't know if I was asked or if I asked to become part of the board at that time, but I sort of wedged my way into it. And what was amazing was that not only the participants attended the auction, but the reviewers attended the auction, and even some of the donors of prints who had nothing to do with the actual event came to the auction and witnessed it, and the momentum and the energy was just incredible. The only problem was that the way that we designed it, the event cost as much to put on as we made. And so I think we tried it a second time. And
we did it 3 times total.
3 times. We even had a catalog of the auction.
Yeah.
But it was an amazing community building event, both locally, and it put Portland on the map for this kind of an organization.
Yeah, yeah.
And then history intervened.
Yeah, so the first portfolio review was in 2000. The second one was in 2001. And as
October.
Yes, October. So the way things normally work is if you can sign up for something, half the people sign up right at the beginning as soon as they can, and half the people sign up at 11:59 of whatever day the deadline is. So as Stu is mentioning, our event was in October. Something happened in September 11th that meant that nobody signed up at the last minute. 11:59 came and went in complete silence. So we had a full slate of reviewers with a full set of hotel room costs and plane ticket costs, and half the photographers. So in a normal PhotoFest style portfolio review, you would have maybe 4, maybe 5 appointments in a day, 20-minute one-on-one appointments with a curator, where you just sit down and you own them for 20 minutes and they tell you whatever, and you hope that they're going to tell you, yes, I want to show your work or I want to publish your work, but that happens sometimes, doesn't happen every time for sure. So suddenly these photographers were having 9 appointments a day, and they were like, this is the most unbelievable thing. And we said, don't get used to it. This will never happen again. So we came. They were so happy. And at the end of the event, the board met and said, okay, we owe $100,000. We don't know where we're going to find it. And we did 2 things. One, we made a beautiful portfolio of 15 prints by 15 of the best photographers from the Northwest, which we sold as a portfolio for $5,000. And there's still a few left if any of you are shopping.
The concept was, it was called the Great Northwest Portfolio. And the concept was that any person or institution could have an instant collection of major photographers from the Northwest that included Terry Totemeyer, Christopher
Carrie
Parker,
Mae Weems.
Carrie Mae Weems. I'm blocking on some of the other names.
Glenn Rudolph, Ford Gilbreth, Patrick
Ford.
Stearns, anyway, a bunch of people.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that was one of the things that we did. The other thing is we were like, oh, how else can we raise money? And our director at that time, Tamara Lishka, said, well, you know, a lot of these organizations do this thing where you pay $40 to send some images in to show them to a prestigious curator. And we sort of, as a group, we sort of went over there. We sort of said, well, it's very rare that somebody actually gets their money's worth in that situation. How can we structure that so that everybody gets their money's worth? So we said, well, we know a lot of prestigious curators. What if we did 50 curators for $50? And you gave us your images on a CD, your artist statement, unfortunately. This is the old days, yeah. People gave us like typed on paper artist statements that we had to retype. And we got work from, I think, 600 photographers to go out to these 50 reviewers eventually. But first, we only had about 25 photographers, and it was getting close. It was like within a week of the deadline. And we reached out to a woman who ran a festival in Birmingham, England, called Rhubarb Rhubarb. We reached out to her and said, you're really good at sort of networking and stuff. Can you get the word out to photographers? She said, well, I will if you also ask the same thing to your other 49 reviewers, which we did. We extended the deadline like 2 weeks or something and went from 25 to 600 people. And in that first year, all the reviewers looked at all 600 portfolios.
10 images.
10 images each, yeah.
And what, didn't a show come out of that?
Yes, and so then there was a top 10 people based on the reviewer feedback, were put into a group show that traveled, as I said earlier, that traveled around to whichever of the reviewers wanted to have it in their space. It was here at Blue Sky, and we have it in our Blue Sky 2004-2005 yearbook on the shelf in the library, if you're curious about it.
Was it a challenge to get the 50 curators to sign on?
No, they were happy to do it, oddly. Yeah, and we...
What were the earliest venues, like in Portland, when you were doing this? Where were the places?
Oh, so we were the only place in Portland that had that show. The other, Mark Zink showed it in Denver, which I remember because he didn't send it on to the next place in time. But anyway, it went to a bunch of places, and it was kind of, even though it was the easiest possible thing, where you just tell us when you want it, just schedule it, and you guys ship it from one to the next, doesn't come back to us in between. It was still more work than we could handle, really. So then we switched to publishing books. And we did a series of books for one or two winners.
And the books, yeah, basically we had a rating system for how the reviewers would respond to the work. And I can't remember if the first time it was a 1 to 4 system or a 1 to 10 system.
It was yes, no, wow.
Yeah, and what we found out was you had to carry out to about 10 decimal places to see the difference. So we artificially spread it to like a 0, 1, 3, and 7 system, even though statistically it would come out in the same sequence. It was a little bit easier to see the difference, just mathematically.
Yeah, so the very first year, we were talking about how do we rate, what's the difference between a yes and a wow? And we said, well, our product is really wow. So we want somebody to have a show somewhere. Our product isn't, oh yeah, everybody thinks this work is pretty good, but nobody wants to show it. That's not our product. So Tamara said, well, why don't we just throw out the yeses and just count only the wows, because that's our product. I said, okay, that's a little radical. We made it 0 points, 1 point, and 7 points. And that's how it was during the time that I was president. Then when Sean Records came in, he wanted to be transparent as president. He wanted to be transparent to the reviewers. So he told them it's 0, 1, 7. They said, no, what if I want to give somebody a 4? Yeah. So that's what Stu's talking about. So then in comes this 4, and then all the numbers get very close, because it changes the product into a little bit of what's the one that everybody likes okay, but they're not super excited about. So that's the reason, and C was talking about earlier, that Blue Sky, for our show, we look at the whole 200, because we don't want the lowest common denominator. We want the oddball that we're really excited about. So we look at the bigger group.
And just to give a behind-the-scenes look of what it's like for the reviewer, once the pre-screeners have narrowed it down to 200 people, we have hired a programming company who sort of puts all this together and comes up with what's called a color wheel system. So the reviewers see 6 different colored circles. You click on one and it shows up 30 people's work alphabetically. I don't know, maybe not alphabetically, probably randomly. And you click on the person's name and you see 10 thumbnails of their work and a link to see their write-up of what it is.
And also their website.
And, yeah, true, their website too. And then you enter your rating, go to the next person, and basically work your way through the color wheel of 200 people, which can take a fair amount of time if you do it with any thought, at least.
Yeah, if you read everybody's statement, it takes a long time.
And I know my own method is I go through and look at everybody's work without reading anything, all 200 really, and then I go back to 30 at a time. I, again, look at all the work, then I go back one at a time, look at the work, read the statement, and look at the work again, and make up my mind.
Yeah.
And I don't know how anybody else does it.
Yeah.
You don't have a day job, do you?
Well, I did.
He did at the time. He was a doctor.
I had a day job in my spare time.
Yeah, I think, I mean, the nice thing about the way Stu is doing it is you have a chance to not just have a first impression, but to say, okay, is this work continuing to resonate with me? When I'm looking at it the 3rd time, am I like, oh God, I hope I don't have to look at this a 4th time? Or, oh, I hope I can look at this 100 times. You know?
Or that I may have seen somebody else's work that's very similar, and which one do I think are they equally important? Is one more important? And for me, the context was important in that regard.
Yeah.
I have one more category when I'm reviewing, and that's, would I buy this work? Could I live with this work? Does this work for my wall?
Yeah.
And that's like a very special echelon.
Yeah. In the first year when it was yes, no, and wow, yes was defined as I'm glad I saw this, and wow was I need to show this to somebody else. I'm excited about this. You know. So.
And I think C referred to this before. For many years I would keep track of the wows that I had assigned to people, and then compare that to the top 50 or the top 100 list. And there was maybe a 10 to 30% overlap for me. I'm not sure what
I think
yours
I
was
had
like.
11
Yeah,
out of 50
yeah, yeah,
of my own labs.
yeah.
So it's sort of fascinating to see how the global community of reviewers interprets the work, which can be very different than one of us as an individual.
Yeah, yeah. Art is very personal, and you bring to it your life experiences, your way of thinking about things, your way of understanding the world, and you can say, "Oh, this work is good. This work is bad." What you mean is, this work, I have a good conversation to have with this work, and as Stu is alluding to, different reviewers come to it from different places, and it's like this work that meant nothing to you is somebody else's wow. You know? So that's the idea of it, is to get it out, get your work out to 200 reviewers, some of whom are going to be blown away by it.
And I want to reiterate at this point the uniqueness of critical mass compared to almost every other type of entry system that I know of. Almost everything else has a themed specific admission. There's maybe 1 to 3 jurors involved. This is the one where it's an open concept, and if you're accepted, your work is seen by up to a couple hundred reviewers all over the world. So it's really an opportunity to get your work widely seen. And there are many people who were working in seclusion, essentially, who all of a sudden their work resonated with everybody, and they were being shown and published. Now, Chris mentioned our publishing event. Early on, we decided that as a reward to the participant, either the top 1 or 2 people, we would publish a book on them if they had not published something before. And I think we ended up publishing 18 or 19 monographs along the way.
And everybody who entered and all the reviewers got a copy of the book. So you paid your money to get in, but you got something. It wasn't one of these things where like...
And we had these wonderful book stuffing parties to ship them out.
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny because in the early years of it, like I would go to PhotoFest and somebody would put their work down in front of me during our 20-minute one-on-one session and say, "Oh yeah, I saw this in Critical Mass." I'd say, "You did?" I said, "You think we took your money and we didn't look at the work?" So people got over that. They realized that the reviewers were really looking at the work, and that it's not. I mean, the in-person reviews like PhotoFest and like Photolucida has done in the past, and the other ones around the country, you start these many-year relationships. You meet somebody, and then you see them again at Rhubarb in England. You see them here, you see them there. Review Santa Fe, whatever, and you develop a professional relationship based on, okay, I'm giving you advice about your work, and here I took your advice, but now I'm doing this, and what do you think of that? And things build, and obviously Critical Mass can't be that. But what it can be is it can be the first step of that. It can be the introduction. And you know, I mean, Elliot, we didn't know him from Adam, and here he's having this beautiful show, you know, and only because he submitted to Critical Mass. And I'm sure we will have a continuing relationship with him over the next decade or two.
And we did ask that if somebody submitted their work to Critical Mass, if they wanted to submit again, it had to be a different body of work, or at least an extension of the body of work with at least eight different images.
Yeah.
And so over the 21 years, really, from 2004 or 5 to now, there were, I think I calculated 1,050 selections of the top 50, so we're 21 times 50. But of that, there were 118 people who were selected twice. There were 30 people who were selected 3 times. There were 11 people who were selected 4 times with different bodies of work, 2 people who were selected 5 times, and 1 person who was selected 6 times.
Wow.
Again, a different body of work every time.
So those are small numbers.
Yeah.
So the idea is it's really introducing new people.
And there were 800 and some unique people who were selected in the top 50 over the 20-some years.
Yeah, yeah. And it means a lot.
Amazing recognition.
Yeah, if you read resumes, CVs of people, they will mention it. It's one of the first things that they brag about is that they were chosen by this international jury pool.
Yeah, either for the 200 or the top 50 they mentioned. And I want to reiterate, I don't know if it was C or Chris or somebody else who mentioned digging deep under the number 50, from number 51 to 200 is still a gold mine. There are amazing things in there that are either quirky or special or unique that just don't fit in anywhere else, but they can resonate with a curator or with a publisher or whatever. So it's an amazing selection of work.
Yeah, I remember when we were just looking at the top 50 at one point. There was a body of work that had been within the 200 and outside the 50 that we were really excited about, that we independently showed. That was a Japanese photographer who would make us. He would scan around a torso and then open it up flat, and it was fantastic work. But it's never going to be one that's the lowest common denominator. Everybody thinks that's pretty good. It was just like, this many people loved it to smithereens, and this many people went, "What the heck is this?" So that's why, even though our exhibition committee is busy all the time, that's why we go ahead and look at everything to see those things.
And I've heard from other curators that they do the same thing. They don't limit it to the top 50.
Yeah.
The top 50 is a prestigious thing, but there's still a lot of good work out there.
Yeah.
And it's always interesting to do critical mass as a reviewer. And then in the alternate years when we had Photolucida live, you'd see many fewer portfolios, but the conversations would be so different because they were in person.
Yeah.
They were across the table from each other.
Yeah. Chris?
Yeah, you just brought up Photolucida live. Can you give us some more context about what happened when it was live? Like what's been going on in the last couple of years or before the pandemic? Can you give us a story arc?
The economy's stupid. Basically, it was a great idea. It was an amazing event. But after COVID, the economy radically changed, and it got to the point where it was not economically feasible to put on that kind of event without doubling the charge to the participants, which we felt was untenable because they're not quite starving artists, but they're not really flush.
Yeah.
And the hotel expenses increased, the travel expenses increased, and there were no alternative places really to show on that scale here in Portland. Yeah. So it just became a victim of the times.
And I will say, PhotoFest went from originally 1 4-day session, got up as high as 4 4-day sessions with 4 different sets of reviewers and photographers coming in, and then started going back down. And I just got back from it, and it's back down to 1 4-day session. And the last one before that was 2 4-day sessions, but the second 4-day session only had half the photographers. So it's like, by the end they were sort of saying, "Why don't you go look at some shows? We ran out of photographers to show you work." So it's partly the expense that Stu is talking about, which is a big part of it, but it's also there's now so many portfolio review events all over the country that it's spreading the audience very thin. And when it was just PhotoFest, people would come from all over the world, as Janet's saying. I mean, we met so many photographers. First, there was a bunch of British photographers. There was a bunch of Korean photographers last several years. South America, yeah. So there's been this real international gathering place aspect to it that was unique to the Houston Photo Fest that none of the other festivals had because they didn't have PhotoFest they were in Houston. So there was all this oil money around. So they could do a lot of fundraising and do things that didn't make economic sense because they could get Enron to give them a bunch of money.
But there were other things happened here that I think showed the flavor of Portland in that we became one of the most user-friendly experiences compared to any other portfolio review. We got an incredible reputation for that. We pre-programmed the At PhotoFest, to sign up to see a reviewer, you got in this long line and you got a number, and it was almost cutthroat. People were.
It took 2 hours of your day just
putting-
standing online, making your
here
appointments
we
every
made-
day.
We had people submit their preferences, we did some first we did some non-computer matching, then some computer matching to line things up, and essentially give a person their schedule of what they were gonna see. We had not quite reception room, but an informal review room where we had local people looking at work, people could look at each other's work, and it created a more friendly environment than the cutthroat environment
Yeah.
in other places. And I think we became a model of all the portfolio reviews that came afterwards.
Yeah, we did change the whole field, I think. Yeah, and one of the things that we did was, so the first year, I wanted to have at least 52 shows, because I wanted to make a catalog that was a deck of cards, which we have one in here. So I went around to all the galleries in town and said, will you show some photography? And I had notebooks of slides. For those of you who are younger, there used to be this thing called slides. And I said, so if you don't know a photographer, I can show you some exciting work, you know. And everybody said, no, we know a photographer. But for a gallery that doesn't show photography, but they know one photographer, the odds that that's really a good photographer are not that high. So the first event, I went around and I looked at all the 52 shows and was like, man, the photographers had such great work under their arms, and the public was not invited in to see, and how can we fix that? So then we did this portfolio. We invented the portfolio walk. So we had it at PNCA, which in their space the students couldn't leave the building without walking through this big lobby. So we said, okay, we'll set up tables there. We'll have the Photolucida photographers spread their work out on tables, and at least the students will have to come by and look at it. And hundreds of people showed up.
Ad in the paper,
We-
as I recall,
yeah.
it's the only real publicity.
Yeah, and hundreds of people showed up because Portland, like I say, Portland is this community that's like, oh yeah, let's do that, you know.
It was mobbed.
It was mobbed,
like
yeah,
you could barely
yeah.
move around.
Then ultimately that moved over to the Portland Art Museum where the
To the sunken ballroom.
sunken ballroom and the fire marshal was standing by the door saying, you can't come in until someone leaves. I mean, it was at capacity.
And for a while, there was a place in Northwest that was, I think you must have paid for it, that was a larger space than PNCA.
Yeah,
It was between
once in the Northwest.
PNCA
Yeah.
and the Art
I
Museum.
can't remember the name of the place, but we did rent out one year.
Yeah.
Yeah. But. And then I went to there's a gathering of photography festivals, international photography festivals, and I told everybody, you have to do this portfolio walk thing. Have your photographers put their work on tables, invite the public. And it was also so that we could write a grant, because it's very hard to write a grant to say this is an important thing happening in Portland and the public is not invited to anything. It's like, why is your local arts commission going to support that? You know?
Because you were bringing in people who were going to spend money on hotels.
Yeah, but yeah. So anyway, so this gave us something that made it be valuable to the local community. We also did some lectures that the public was invited to too. But I mean, you have to think about, where is the money going to come from? Is it going to come from anywhere other than the photographer's pockets, which is, as Stu is alluding to, the last place we want to look for it.
And sometimes Mary alluded to the fact we did bring in a keynote speaker, and often had them speak at the Portland Art Museum, and did some cooperative things there.
Yeah.
And once, I think, we even had our event back-to-back with a national SPE, Society for
Yep.
Photographic Education event. So some of the people stayed over for it.
Yeah.
And just amazing community building.
Yeah, Richard Mizrak was our speaker one year, and first he came and he said, so I go to all this trouble to lug around an 8x10 camera and make these gorgeous prints, and then I show this 35 millimeter slide with dust all over it and wonder, what am I doing? Anyway, but.
Anyone have any questions?
Who here has submitted work to Critical Mass? And Chris and I raise our hands. We were both on the board the first year, and we said, well, there's a conflict of interest here. And so the board members were no longer able to, and then Chris dropped off the board, so he was free to submit them and got into the top 50 at least 4 times.
Yeah, but not recently. What about some of you other folks who submitted to it? Grace, what is your experience of it?
Well, I don't submit every year. My work is slow, very slow, so it takes a long time to get 10 new pieces. But let's see, I've gotten in, I think 3 times, twice in top 50. 2023, I got in the top 50, and that just kind of blew it up. I mean, that year I was in blogs and internationals. I mean, it just really spread like crazy. And now I'm like worried that everyone's tired of that kind of work. But yeah, I got All About Photo did a spread on me, and then that just kind of went viral. And then I got individual unique interviews from all these other publications. So it really did go worldwide.
It did what it was supposed to do.
Yeah, but it wasn't quite like that at the, earlier on. But now everything's so online, and I'm trying to think. And there's just been a lot came out of that, more than I can even.
Okay.
But it was very good. Yeah, I got a lot of recognition.
Great.
So that's nice.
It's sort of sad when it goes away.
Yeah. 2024 is like more.
I once had an author on Fresh Air, and his interview posted on Thursday night, or all day Thursday, depending on where Fresh Air played. And on Friday, the numbers on Amazon for his book started bouncing. And on Saturday and Sunday, Saturday they stayed static, and Sunday around 4, they started to dwindle. Oh, he said, now my book is dead.
Well, and the sad thing about that is they typically do this stuff before the book is actually out.
Well, yeah.
So you say, oh, I got to go get that. And then Sunday comes and goes, and the book still isn't out yet, and you're on to the next thing. So
Yeah, no,
that's a strange piece of timing.
Yeah, it's strange timing, but this book had been amazing because I started talking to the West Coast correspondent for the New York Times 3 months before it came out, because it was a West Coast publisher. And I called him every month. And in March, the author was going to be in Seattle, and he said, okay, I'm ready. And I thought, wow, it's a good thing I'm tenacious. and I remember the marketing director calling me and saying, the story's in the Times, and it's above the fold.
Yeah, above the fold, right?
Who was the author?
It was a poet named John Balaban, and he'd done a book on a Vietnamese 17th century concubine Buddhist poet whose entire body of work was 45 poems. It took him 10 years to translate it because it was in a lost dialect. Copper Canyon Press in Port Townsend published it.
Wow.
And it was an amazing book.
This is pretty, but it's
Yeah, there were lots of books.
obscure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, wow, that's
Yeah.
cool.
For 40 some odd years, I've been a publicist, and there are 5 books that stand out. That's one of them.
Okay, cool. Chris?
Yeah, what's the entry fee today, and do you have any innovations to Photolucida or Critical Mass that you're thinking about?
Well, as Stu alluded to, there's not an in-person review anymore, so there's not a fee there because we weren't willing to make it twice as high. But
Right, although we're toying with the idea of maybe having many reviews in different cities, but that's still a pipe dream at this point. But the way the fees work for Critical Mass is there's a $75 entry fee for 10 images. That goes to the pre-screening reviewers, and there could be 600 to 900 entries. They do ratings. They pick out the top 200, and those 200 names are asked to pay another, I don't know if it's $125 or $150 to then have their work seen by the 200 reviewers.
So that's for critical mass.
Yeah.
Critical Mass, yeah. Yeah,
That's pretty inexpensive.
Yeah.
yeah.
Whereas most other reviews are $40 or $50. You submit 3 images and they're seen by a couple people.
Or one. I had one where I was a juror, and they said, yeah, we want you to look at the work blind. And I said, these people are paying a bunch of money so that I can look at their work blind? That's the relationship that you're...
By which you mean not knowing
without, I look at the image and it doesn't tell you who the photographer is. I said, that's unacceptable. I have to know who the photographers are. So we compromised. I said, okay, I'll jury it, and then you send me a list of who the photographers are so that I can follow the people that I'm excited about. I want to be able to follow them and, look at their website and see what else they've done.
What's the point of doing it blind?
So it's fair.
So you don't know, there's no bias there.
Right.
So the other aspect to submitting the work is having a statement along with it. And sometimes the statements became a little bit onerous for the reviewers to review because they might be pages long. So finally we said, we want to limit it to so many words.
Yeah.
And we're almost tempted to say, and if you use this particular word, you're...
Grace?
Do you want to say what the word is?
There's a bunch of them.
That's a hot take. The first, I guess, it was a Photo Americas was
Yeah.
the first.
It was first called Photo Americas, and then we
changed
changed
our
the
name.
name. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm on that disc. That was
Yeah.
the first one.
Yeah.
I still have it.
Yeah.
That little disc.
Yeah, I just wanted to reflecting on the early days of Photolucida. I was just thinking, so I was on the board and for a while, and I guess I was a juror too at some point. But like,
And ran the desk for the photographers.
Other people volunteered too. Lucy, I think Grace did. I mean, it was, but that kind of goes to my point too, that it's like very similar, that it followed in the vein of Blue Sky. And like, this like, I mean, certainly there were people that did that, the large part of the work, but just like bringing together like this community and everybody working on that, the larger photography community. But there's a lot of people that originated at Blue Sky that then became very involved in Photolucida. And it was just like a really cool path, I think.
And exhibition committee members of Blue Sky got a chance to be reviewers.
Yeah.
And I think it also brings out the uniqueness of Portland's photographic community in terms of the interconnection of all the little pockets of people. I think in my experience, we're a very unique town as far as the photo world. Almost everybody knows each other, talks to each other, gets along with each other. There's nothing cutthroat about the interactions. I think it's a very mutually supportive town, and we should really be proud of it.
Yeah. No, I'll agree with that. Yeah, and when we started Blue Sky in 1975, there were really only 4 other galleries in the Portland metropolitan area, something like that. I don't know the exact number. And 2 of those galleries were photo galleries. It was Camwork Gallery at Good Samaritan Hospital, started in 1972. It was started by the interim workshop, which was the people who would take Minor White's workshops in Portland that were, if you read the oldest issues of Aperture magazine, they're transcripts of his workshops. And this being Portland, the same people would take the workshops, and then they looked at each other and said, well, we could get together between when Minor White comes. We don't have to wait for him to come to get together. We live here. So that's the interim part of the interim workshop. And Dr. Galen, who was one of those people, went to the Good Samaritan Hospital and said, give me a hallway, I want to put a photo gallery in it. And then out in Oregon City, there was a camera store, Mr. Pick's camera store, and Shad Williams, who's a local photographer, started a gallery there, the Shadow Gallery.
Upstairs.
And had very ambitious shows. I mean, well-known photographers, very good shows. And then Blue Sky came in and we said, well, we're greedy, we want to see even more. So we started yet another one. But I think a lot of the interim workshop photographers, a lot of them were sort of the more traditional Western white, that kind of photography. And we were showing a little more oddball things than that. And as Stu was saying, I think we later found out that they thought we were dissing them, that we didn't care what they did. But we did a CD for one of our birthday things. It's called Eyes of a City, City of Eyes, and it was a CD-ROM, so now it's a coaster. But anyway, we went to these folks and said, we want you to give us, it was when we were 25 years old, we want you to give us 25 images to put on this CD to talk about how Portland is such an amazing photo city, and you're such an important part of it. And that's when we discovered, they said, oh, well, we thought you hated us. And we said, not at all. You know? So I think it is a very unusual community. I know in Portland there's at least 10 groups of photographers who meet in various combinations to look at each other's work and support each other and give each other feedback. And
one of the ex-Blue Sky founders weaseled his way into becoming a curator at the art museum.
that's true. Yeah. Yeah.
And that tied that community in.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a very inclusive, nice community here. I mean, I grew up in New York City, and I came out here. It was like, oh, I want to live here, because it's not every man for himself. It's like, yeah, what can we accomplish together? And you know, you look at this gallery that we're sitting in that's 50 years old. How did we get to be 50 years old? Because a bunch of people kind of came in and put their time and energy and money into it, and helped it exist. It's, you know, we were saying with OPB when they previewed their thing that they're doing for our 50th birthday, little 9-minute segment on Blue Sky, which is great. At the beginning of it, I said, and the people in this room who are OPB members and Blue Sky members, you made both of these things happen. You know, so. You know, when
Thankful to members like you.
yeah, no, and when Christina's talking about, yeah, so it was all, you know, it was all these people volunteering to do things and make things happen, and that's how things happen. You know, there's a project here in Portland called the Portland Grid Project that's been going for 40 years. That's just photographers getting together and photographing in each section of the city and meeting once a month, meeting with each other and looking at each other's work, and. You know, it's been copied by a number of other cities, have stolen the idea, and their idea peters out after 1 year when the funding disappears. And the Portland one is going on, it's over 40 years. So, with no funding, yeah. So it's a different community. This is a different community.
And how does one connect to that you just mentioned?
To the Portland Grid Project?
To whatever you said about people getting together and photographing around the city.
Yeah, so that's if there's a website, portlandgridproject.com. Grid Project. The grid, if you...
Portland grid, like a... Grid.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, when...
The acoustics are terrible.
Sorry, yeah. So we got a AAA map of the city, and it has blue lines, horizontal, vertical lines, so you can look up and say, where's Terwilliger Street? Oh, it's in D14, you know, whatever. Actually, it wouldn't be in D14. Bad example. So we just cut with scissors along those blue lines. And once a month, there'd be one chosen square. It started with N7 and then went to P8. And a dozen photographers would go photograph for a month in that square and then get together to look at each other's work. And I'm one of the co-founders of that, but I dropped out after a measly 19 years. So now it's other people. And I don't know how you get involved in that. You have to figure it out. Yeah, you have to figure it out. 'Cause I'm not part of that anymore.
You know, in these groups, the interim workshop group, Descendants of Minor White, and the Shadow Gallery, which was West Coast Landscape Photography. I mean, this space wouldn't exist without them at State College. And, you know, that connection, you know,
Yeah.
some of the people that were at Portland State studying under Willie Graham, and then that guy from Reed College who came, you know, professor from Reed College who
Kirk Thompson.
got kicked out because he was too political for Reed College, and went up and started the photo community at Evergreen.
Yeah.
And so that group that came from PSU, Greg Hickman, and you know, a few other people, and Hughes,
Yeah.
who made the posters for Blue Sky, and then the kooky people up at Evergreen who were, you know, interested in the peculiarities of the medium instead of driftwood and zone system, you know, and throwing your cameras up in the air with self-timers. And then, you know, just that whole kind of, you know, revolutionary thinking about the possibilities of photography.
Yeah.
I think is a big part of what made Portland what it is.
Yeah. But it was already quite a bit. I mean, yes, I agree with you, but I'm saying it was already a major photo center. I mean, San Francisco being the biggest. But we were probably the second hottest.
San Francisco wasn't as inclusive.
It was
And I think
pretty
it's because
good.
of the scale of San Francisco versus Portland.
Yeah. But I mean, at one point in San Francisco, there were 7 photo auctions from 7 photography nonprofits per year.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a lot going on. There was a Photo Metro, was a free photography magazine that was distributed all over the city. There was just a lot down there.
San Francisco camera work.
Yeah.
And of course,
And the San Francisco Art Institute was,
That was huge.
And San Francisco State had good photography programs.
yeah,
That's where I started.
yeah. So that was, and you know, when you had Ansel Adams and Imogen Cunningham, there were charismatic, giving individual people down
And
there.
actually, from my perspective, Carmel sort of became the nidus
Yeah.
of the photo energy in Central California, and some of that spilled over. There was, it resonated in San Francisco, but Carmel almost became a mecca.
Yeah.
Getting back to Photolucida, I was a pre-screener several times.
Yeah.
And I've been a photographer and an editor for over 50 years. And I would just like to say that another benefit of Photolucida is the education of a lot of picture editors
Yeah.
that were pre-screeners or whatever. Because, for instance, my background is a lot of editorial, and from magazines to newspapers and beyond. But as a pre-screener, I was looking at things like that puppet back there.
Yeah.
I was looking at things that were where someone had sewn threads through a picture.
Yeah.
And it challenged me to look at those images and say, this is good, why is it? Or is it better than, and like Stu was saying earlier, there may be two different people who work in the same sort of genre, and which one stands out?
Yeah.
So this educated me to more varieties and more genres of photography, and I think that everybody that was ever a pre-screener for Photolucida learned something from that experience.
Yeah. And I will say that was part of our intention too, was to, because I would go to there was an international gathering of nonprofit photo curators. And I would go there and I would see somebody I hadn't seen for a couple of years. I'd say, oh, what are you working on? They say, oh, I'm still working on that same Stieglitz show. And they'd say, what are you working on? I said, well, we've done 20-something shows a year, so I can give you a big list, And so when we were looking at this, it was like, oh, this will be not only a way for photographers to get their work into, for their own benefit, to get their work into the minds of these reviewers who are not seeking it out, but it's also a chance to get the reviewers to, as exactly what you're talking about, to look at things that they wouldn't seek out and to sort of say, whoa, wait a minute, this is more interesting than Stieglitz. I mean, at the time, the Getty didn't collect anything in the 20th century. They were only collecting 19th century.
And as far as the history of critical mass in the top 50, the photolucida.org website has the critical mass top 50 winners going back to 2018. Wow. So if you ever want to take a look and you go to the website and hit critical mass, it'll give you a drop down for a year, and it'll have all 50 people, and you can delve into their statements and their 10 images. So there's several years worth of images if you want to see historically what's been submitted.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see how people have grown up and changed.
Yeah.
If you go back through something like that.
And how some of the issues, the global issues,
Yeah.
have migrated.
Yeah. And for those of you here during C's talk, I mean, C was saying that they looked at the top 50 work and found a real sort of emotional resonance, that a lot of people were feeling the difficulty of this moment, let's say, in history, and that's reflected in the work. So it is, you can just kind of go to whatever the museum is showing and see whatever they're showing you, but this is a chance to sort of take the bull by the horns and see for yourself what do you think is going on.
Also, photography itself has changed so much in the last, decade and a half, 2 decades. Just looking at that, you can see how the field has grown and broadened.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
That's why I get a little frustrated with I guess I want to call them the straight gallery. The galleries, there's so many galleries of, that show art, and so many of them will not show photography. And I find it so bizarre because the old argument of is photography art, that's so old and dead, but there is still that bias. I have a very hard time with galleries just even willing to look at, or, you know, or they'll just say photography doesn't sell, or things like that. Or I had one gallerist say to me, I just don't know anything about photography. I was like, well, I do. I could pull you in, you know. It's such a vibrant, incredible medium, and for these galleries to be close to it is so, it's just beyond what I can understand.
And to me, you know, maybe I'm preaching to the choir, but one of the nice things about photography is the portability of it. It can be shown not only in the town that you're in, but if I'm doing 6 by 8 foot canvas paintings, I can't ship those around.
Yeah.
But photographs can really travel around the country, if not the world. I mean, it's a great opportunity.
Yeah.
So, with great opportunity, it brings me to being timekeepers.
Okay.
We've been here engaged in conversation for an hour, and I am going to suggest that we get up and mill around and talk to people and
Sounds good. Thanks, you guys.
Well, thank you for coming.